The Supreme Court just gave ICE the license to racially profile people in Los Angeles. That's how some people are interpreting a recent Supreme Court decision. It's just one of several high profile immigration related cases. We broke some of them down a few months ago here on the Border Brief. And with so much happening right now, we thought it'd be a good time for another SCOTUS update. This is the Border Brief. We've asked Kathleen Busch-Joseph to come back on the show and help us understand what's going on. Kathleen is a policy analyst for the Migration Policy Institute, and she's been following several immigration related cases making their way through the Supreme Court. Kathleen, welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
Let's start with that Los Angeles case, Perdomo v. Nome. The Supreme Court reversed two lower court decisions that barred immigration agents from stopping people without reasonable suspicion. They had been stopping people because of what they looked like, what language they spoke, and where they worked. Kathleen, can you talk us through that SCOTUS decision?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's important to start out by noting that this was an emergency docket case, what some people have called the shadow docket.
Hmm.
So we actually didn't get a full decision from the Supreme Court. But as you said, they reversed these lower court decisions, meaning that now the US government can be arresting people quickly for immigration purposes. Justice Kavanaugh wrote a concurring opinion, and then Justice Sotomayor wrote a dissent. And we got some hints at what the court was thinking through those. So, if helpful, I can explain a little bit about what they were discussing.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful for folks to just like, what does this mean for people on the ground? Right.
Yeah. Essentially, at issue here were these really fast arrests that immigration officials had been making in the Los Angeles area. And the immigrant advocates were saying these arrests are not based on a reasonable suspicion, an individualized assessment as agents are going out into the field. Rather, they were alleging that these arrests were based on unlawful targeting and going after people for the color of their skin, for example.
Hmm.
In reality, what the court is saying here is that agents can actually make these arrests if they're looking at the totality of the circumstances, is what they said. Justice Kavanaugh was clear. Arrest can't be based on skin color alone. That would be illegal. But when you're looking at where someone is arrested, if they're speaking Spanish and the type of work that they're doing, all of those things together might mean that agents do have that reasonable suspicion.
So, like, will someone like me? I'm Mexican. I speak Spanish. If I go to a Home Depot with my grandma and we're speaking Spanish, I drive a shitty Corolla. Would that be enough, or we don't know? I guess that's kind of the concern people have about this type of decision.
Right. People were raising a lot of legitimate concerns after this decision. And importantly, Justice Kavanaugh actually flagged that there might be some US citizens, lawful permanent residents, people here with valid visas who end up getting arrested because of these circumstances.
Hmm.
He was saying that as long as the stops are fast, it's okay. But this raises the questions of what if you do not have your ID on you? What if you can't prove that you're a US citizen? Will the stop still be fast? And if not, what can you do about it?
Well, thank you for that. I really, really appreciate it. Let's move on to another case, one that maybe isn't getting as much attention as Perdomo v. Nome. Now, this one's called Make the Road New York v. Nome, and it challenges the Trump administration's expansion of fast-track deportations known as expedited removals. Tell us a little bit about why you think this case is so important.
Yeah, this one I think has really flown under the radar so far,
Mhm.
but expedited removal, this fast deportation procedure, is, I think, one of the most potent tools that the Trump administration is using in its mass deportation campaign. That's because it allows for immigration officials to issue a removal order in as few as a couple of hours. That's way shorter than the years that it can take to receive a decision from an immigration judge at court.
Mhm.
So, this is a huge game changer for the Trump administration to be using it in the interior of the country. For decades, this practice has only been used on recent border arrivals who came in at the border or at sea. So, this is a major shift. And this case looks at the Trump administration's expansion and ramp up of this authority.
So it kind of makes sense, right? This is a process we can use, or the government has used, for people who just came across the border very recently, haven't established ties here or really had much of a history here in the U.S. So it's historically was seen as okay to limit it to that small population, but the Trump administration has expanded it to include people who have been for a year or two and who may have more, I don't know, family, employment, marriage, those types of relationships already established.
Right. Thanks for noting. There are important limits on this authority, and people who are in the country for more than 2 years, it had been thought should not be put through this fast process. Unaccompanied immigrant children are also exempt, and then people who have an asylum claim are also supposed to be screened.
Hmm.
The Trump administration, though, is pushing the legal boundaries, and we're hearing about several cases in which people who've been in the country for a long time, so they should normally, we think, get an immigration court hearing, have actually been ordered deported through expedited removal,
Hmm.
and in some cases removed as quickly as the next day. I think it's really important to say that of the almost 14 million unauthorized immigrants in the country, we at the Migration Policy Institute, that most of them have been in the country for a decade or more. So when we're thinking about who's being arrested in the interior of the country and who should get a hearing in immigration court, we're talking about millions of people.
And just last question on this one, but what is the legal argument, or what is the judge being asked to decide about this case?
Yeah, so this case is now at the appellate court level in Washington, D.C., and it follows a lower court judge deciding that this expansion is actually unlawful because of a violation of constitutionally protected rights,
Hmm.
liberty interests of people who've been in the country, and the fear that US citizens will be arrested and ordered deported, for example. But essentially, the Trump administration is saying this is one of our biggest tools for trying to quickly deport people. So we need to be able to use this. The law says that we can expand this authority. And so we're just doing what Congress said we could. It
Eh,
remains to be seen. Oh, sorry. Go
No, no,
ahead.
go ahead. No, I think I was going to ask what you were going to say. Right, you
Mm.
mentioned it's in the appellate court. Assuming the appellate court comes to a similar conclusion as the lower court, is it safe to say the Trump administration would challenge it, and this could end up in the Supreme Court eventually?
Absolutely. I think that this could quickly reach the Supreme Court because of how important it is to the Trump administration right now. And all of that goes to show that there's so many of these cases that are still in the early stages. This is what we talked about last time,
Hmm.
too, where we could see more and more cases going to the Supreme Court once, twice, or maybe more than that, even.
Well, let's begin wrapping up a little bit by taking a step back. All right, as someone who follows these cases, what do you think they say about the current state of not just our immigration system, but the Trump administration's mass deportation campaign?
We're seeing a pattern emerge here. And that's that judges are trying to wrestle with these really big questions about basic constitutional rights. Can people be arrested? Can people be detained? And what happens if they are?
Mm.
Are there these free speech rights in the context of immigration? And these are some really major questions for judges to be wrestling with. And we're seeing that at times the Supreme Court is not agreeing with the conclusions of these lower court judges. At the same time, the Supreme Court is issuing decisions without explanation on this emergency docket. And so judges are going to, I think, continue to struggle to wrestle with these questions, just like immigrants, immigrant advocates, and US citizens are going to continue to wrestle with what the Trump administration's mass deportation campaign means for them.
Well, Kathleen, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us. I do really appreciate you being here.
Thank you again.
Yeah, and thank you for watching another episode of Border Brief. Please follow KPBS on social media for more interviews like this one and Immigration Explainer videos.